If you recall, this next authoress had done a reading from her book Baphomet's Bench, A Dark Girl's Guide to the Summoning of Dark Lord only a short while ago. Sybil Weisenthal, esteemed satanic scholar, returns to the podium to give us a new work, an entirely novel one that in a medium she has not yet explored until now. We are therefore honored and privileged to welcome back Ms. Sybil Weisenthal.
Good evening. I must say that I have already written what you might call a holiday-themed book entitled Satan versus Santa, Dyslexia and Witchcraft. But I will not be reading from this book tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I return to you to present a children's story. Now, I have no children of my own, of course, but it is during this time of year that my sister feels so inclined to deposit her cursed offspring on my doorstep so that she might partake in that hypocritical merriment that was once pagan and then bastardized by those devoted to that awful babe. As rhyme is the primary avenue for fairy tales, I will reintroduce into the Western tradition that beast known as Krampus, once god of witches who was taken from us by Christianity, and then further obscured by the new consumer canon of Santa Claus. But enough of my banter. I shall now begin. Oh, and I dedicate this little book to my niece so that she might correct herself before she turns into her mother. 'Twas the eve of Saint Nick that this story begins. I will tell it as it was, so that you may tell it to your kin. Little Annie May, a girl of about 7, was as wicked as they come, and without the fear of heaven. She was a mean little girl with pigtails of gold, but with a heart that was black, and a manner that was too bold. Her parents worked to the bone to get her what she wished, and they lay sound asleep on the night of December the 5th. She stayed up alone with a Pepsi in hand, and on an iPad she played the games that were banned. And then there was a sound, distant though it was. Annie heard a jingling, the kind that Santa does. "More toys for me," she said aloud, for she thought it was Santa, come early with gifts abound. She reasoned he arrived before the Christmas rush to deliver her presents before the winter slush. Then there came a rapping, a soft but sure knocking on the door. Annie May leapt up and ran across the floor. She swung the door open, and much to her surprise, Santa was not there. Instead, a creature did rise. In place of boots were hooves, no round stomach to be seen. When she looked upon his face, there was an expression so mean. "You're not Santa," said she, to which the thing snarled. "No, my name is Krampus," he said. "See my horns so gnarled?" Annie May scoffed. "Well, I've never heard of you." "All the better," he said. "I've come to collect my due." He tossed her in his bag before she could scream. Maybe I'm making it up, she thought. Maybe it's a dream. But he carried her off, away from her home. In that bag there were children. None were fully grown. Some were frozen dead, while others were in tears. And this once stone-cold brat began to tremble in fear. She shook and she screamed, "Let me out of here, let me go. My parents will come after you. My dad's a lawyer, you know. He'll find you and he'll sue you. Just you wait and see. You're gonna go to jail unless you release me." This Krampus was not bothered. He just gave the sack a shake. A limp hand fell on her and made Annie May quake. Time dragged on forever. His chains rattled as they walked. More children were crammed in, but none of them would talk. Finally, the sack flipped over, and they all fell to the floor. There must have been 50 children, maybe even more. The ones that were frozen stiff, Krampus tossed in a corner. It was littered with bones. This sight alone should have warned her. The others he lined up into 5 little rows. He looked upon them all and asked, "Would you like to go home?" From the crowd there came a chorus of yelps. Some were cursing at him, and others were screaming for help. Annie Mae was the loudest as she cried for her daddy, but he knew she was practiced and was not so sappy. "Now," he said as he drooled, "you wicked children still live. There are 2 choices for you. There are only 2 that I can give. If you promise to be good, that you will change your ways, then you are free to go to live the rest of your days. But if you choose to stay bad, then into hell you must go, to serve Satan as his demons, for your souls have sunk so low." Annie knew just what to say. She was as mean as she was crude. She smiled sweetly and said, "I promise never to be rude. Mr. Krampus," she said, "I know how bad I've been. I know I ask for too much. I know that I have sinned." To this Krampus smiled and kneeled before the girl. "So you've changed, you say?" And his wicked mouth did curl. "Oh, yes, sir, I promise," the little girl said. "I will forever be good, lest I be dead." "Then you are free to go. You may leave my lair. But remember, I always know when you're being unfair." So she and 2 boys left that prison of a cave into a night that was so very cold, a trial they'd have to brave. She skipped into the woods, thinking she was so clever. She tricked the monster, his little trap she did sever. Annie walked and walked, lost, frightened, and cold. Her companions were gone. She was tired, hungry, and alone. She lost feeling in her feet, for she only wore wet socks, and her head hung heavy from the weight of her frozen locks. She collapsed on the ground at the foot of a tree. She looked up at the moon, the last sight she'd ever see. For Krampus knew her promise she made with fingers crossed. So he sent her into the bitter night, and now she is forever lost. Let this be a warning to you, a cautionary tale. Krampus will come to get you. You will be punished without fail. If you ask for too much, if you are impolite, he will whisk you away into the cold, dark night. No one missed Annie, for she was far too horrid. And here ends our tale, so bleak and so morbid. Thank you. I understand it is customary to answer questions. Are there any questions from the audience? No? You have nothing to ask? Very well. Good evening.
Sybil Weisenthal.